In this video, we're going to cover the Battlemaster class specialization, and primarily focusing in a little bit more detail on the features and whatnot specific to the Battlemaster, but I will interject areas that touch on the fighter class because, as I said earlier, technically you're still a fighter class, and you'll see that when we drop the specialization into the character, this doesn't actually change. So all of the fighter-specific elements, such as the extra attack, the indomitable, stuff like that, they will still apply to the Battlemaster. But in this case, there are some differences between the other classes in relation to these particular features, and those are primarily where I'll go into the most detail. So once again, I'm going to drop the fighter class, and I'm left-clicking on that little eye icon, holding it down, and I'm dragging it over to here. This time I'm going to choose the Battlemaster as my specialization. And what that's going to initially give us is a couple of things. One, we will see that we have the martial archetype listed, and that's just telling us that we've added our archetype and what levels we'll actually get our next archetype specific elements. So that's these specific features. We now have our Battlemaster archetype link, which literally just allows us to get back to this particular screen here. And finally, we have gained our first feature specific to the Battlemaster, and that is combat superiority. So I've gone ahead and I've opened up the combat superiority ability description or feature description. And this ability works very differently from most of the other abilities we have seen thus far. And that really comes down to the fact that as a Battlemaster, you are learning a technique called maneuvers. You start off with 3 of them, and at levels 7, 10, and 15, you learn 2 additional maneuvers for a total, I believe that's 9. The maneuvers that you can learn are all shown in this particular table, and there are a total of 16 of them, as you can see here. Okay. None of these are actually set up in reference to the combat superiority skill, which I've already dragged into place just so I can get an idea as to what is actually here. And as such, we're going to have to go through and literally build out all of the effects or types of attacks that will occur with each of these particular maneuvers. Additionally, you have something called superiority dice. You initially start with 4, and they are actually made up of a D8. That gives you essentially the ability to expend 1 superiority die and use, or there may be even a 1 or more statement in that, but initially it's 1, and use one of these maneuvers as part of that process. And the description of how that superiority die gets actually used is explained in each of the maneuvers themselves. So, in addition, at levels 7 and at 15, you gain additional superiority dice. So you get 1 at each level, which gives you a grand total of 6. This will give you a total of 6 maneuvers that you can actually use throughout the course of your character's leveling, and once they're at max level, that's pretty much it. Before we get into the details of combat superiority, I want to point out that there actually is one additional feature that we received when we acquired the Battlemaster archetype, and that's essentially the Student of War. And what that gives you is the ability to choose an artisan tool of your choice. So you gain a proficiency in an additional tool, essentially. And it can be any tool. It could be the smithing tools, it can be the brewing tools, jeweler's tools if you wish, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a crafting group, if you will, that's associated with war mongering or making tools for war, stuff like that. It could be whatever you decide to pick. So I'll get into that once I've gone over and covered the details for superiority dice. But I just wanted to make that aware so that people didn't go, hey, you forgot one, before I'd actually gotten to it at the end of combat superiority. So in order to actually start adding the effects specific to combat superiority to your action page, there are a couple of ways that this can be done. In the classic version of Fantasy Grounds, there is an extension that is released by a gentleman by the name of Rob Toohey. You can find his work on DM's Guild, and I'll provide a link to his YouTube channel and whatnot that you can go check him out. The way that he's gone through and done it is he's built an individual effect as a spell. And essentially you'd look for combat superiority here, and then you drag the appropriate maneuver into place on your action tab. And he's broken it down to the 16 different maneuvers that you have, and you literally just drag and drop each one into place. That works great, don't get me wrong, but I think it suffers from one problem, and that is it doesn't tie directly into the number of superiority die that you actually get. So whether it's 4 or whether it's 6 superiority die, you as a player might unintentionally make use of a superiority die that you have already potentially burned through. Based on, depending on how frequently you play the game. You guys might play the game once, or your girls might play the game once a month. You might play it once a week. I don't know anybody who actually plays it once a day, although that may be happening now with the isolation process in place. But in any event, there is that risk. And in my mind, that is something that I want to be able to work around, mainly due to my OCD. But anyway, so the second way that we can do this is add all of the individual maneuvers as an effect to this particular battle or combat superiority skill. So if you look here, each of these is an effect or action that is directly associated with the combat superiority feature. And what that allows us to do is during the preparation phase, we can set this to be usable for the number of superiority die that you have on a daily basis and leave it at a daily reference. Now, I'm just going to confirm one thing before. Okay, so it is if you finish a short or a long rest. That means we can flip this to rest. So what that means is that regardless of whether you take a long or a short rest, you will regain all of your expended superiority die before your next combat encounter or before your next encounter. And you can do that by setting the number of superiority die here, i.e. the number of times that you can use it. And even though this is switched to a rest state, it always says uses per day. I have no idea why. But anyway, that's just the name of the field. By changing this to rest, we're telling the game that anytime this player executes a short rest or a long rest, recoup the dice expended. So if we go back to combat and action, you'll see that these effects are here, or these abilities. In this case, rather, it's a saving throw. They are here, and what that means is that as you go through the process of expending your superiority die throughout the course of an encounter, eventually you'll run out. Now you can't unintentionally make use of a combat superiority maneuver unless you intentionally didn't tick or unintentionally didn't tick one of those pips. Now the DM then has to go through and execute a rest for the party and or player. And as you can see, they have now come back. And I just executed a short rest just so you can know, and you can see that here in the chat. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to go through and create specific effects or specific actions directly associated with a maneuver. And I'm going to try to do that on screen here so that you can see how it is done. And that is so that you as the Battlemaster can make use of these features and abilities and know how to make use of them if and when you go through and create it. The Battlemaster skill set is probably one of the most complicated feature sets to work with because of the combat superiority requirements and specifically its feature. And I'm hoping that this will make things a little bit easier so that we could potentially see more Battlemasters out in the field, as that's probably one of the reasons why people don't play this particular class as often, subclass, specialization rather, as often, is because of the complexity around its combat superiority requirements and how to play it and whatnot. So hopefully this will help solve that problem. Okay, so why don't we go through the process of starting to create each of the effects for each of the maneuvers. Now, these effects here might come into play a little bit later, so I'm going to leave them there for now. But I may come back and clean these out depending on whether I find that they're actually going to be useful or not. So the first one we're going to look at is called Commander Strike. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can forgo one of your attacks and use a bonus action to direct one of your companions to strike. When you do so, choose a friendly creature who can see or hear you and expend one superiority die. So what that means is that we need to be able to create an effect that you can drop onto one of your player companions that will then allow them to make a reaction strike and automatically apply the effects of this particular commander strike. So you're essentially directing a companion in your party to say, attack that creature using this method. It's kind of a way to look at it. So you're going to apply an effect to them and give them a bit of a bonus as a result. So with that in mind, what we can do is create a new effect. And we can do that simply by right-clicking on the Combat Superiority category and add an action. Don't have to reparse anything. We don't have to create anything. Creating an item will actually create like a whole new parent category, if you will. We want to add an action, and in this case, we want to add an effect. So this gives us a nice blank, empty line that we can go through and deal with. Now, to tell the player what, or to tell you rather, what maneuver you are giving the player, then you can do something like this. All right, so it gives you an idea as to what that particular effect is going to be. And if you hover over the icon, you will see what it actually is going to be. And you want to change this so that it goes off on the next roll. Because what it's going to do, what it's going to do is when that particular player attacks and does damage, on their next roll, it's going to apply 1d8 superiority die of damage. Now, I'm foreseeing a potential issue with that. And let me set something up briefly just to do a quick test. So I'm going to create a temporary character. I already have the level champion there, so why don't I just use him for now. And you'll see that I have a champion and I now have a Battlemaster here. I'm going to add an NPC, and as much as the Aorcas really hate me picking on them, I'm going to throw one in there. And then I'm going to open up and throw the Battlemaster and the champion into the combat tracker. So if I open up the combat tracker on the player side, and then I make the Aorca visible, we should now see that I have the champion here, and I have the Battlemaster here. So in theory, I should be able to set things up so that the Battlemaster is going, and I'm going to move the Aorca. So let's set this up as an 18 for initiative and a 20 for initiative, so the Battlemaster gets to go first. All right, so the Battlemaster is currently going. They're going to forgo one of their attacks and target the champion. And you do that by clicking on the icon here and holding down the control key. I am then going to simply click on the effect here. I can do that up here just to make it a little bit easier. Now I've applied that particular effect to that user, and you can, or that player. And you can see the effect here in a little bit more detail if you wish. I'm also going to tick off a superiority die to show that it has been used. And then I'm going to pass my turn. So I am now the commander, or the champion rather. I am now going to go through and execute an attack against the Aorca. So I'm going to target the Aorca. I'm going to load the champion's action tab and take a one-handed swing. Okay, that is a hit. Now if I do the damage, in theory, this should add an additional 1d8 to this damage. And it has done so. So the 2 is the damage I did as part of the attack. The 1 came from the superiority die, and you'll see that the effect has now dropped off the champion. So that effect is working the way that we want it to. Excellent. Okay, so let's take a look at Disarming Attack as the next skill that we're going to want to deal with here. And I want to go ahead, and I'm just going to move this champion out of the way for the moment. I've just temporarily added portraits to them so that we can differentiate them for our testing. All right, so Disarming Strike. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend 1 superiority die to attempt to disarm the target, forcing it to drop 1 item of your choice that it is holding. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and the target must make a strength saving throw, of which on a failed save, it drops the object you have chosen. The object lands at its feet. Okay, so there are a couple of things that are going to come into play here. 1, when you attack and hit, you're going to get an effect applied to yourself that you're going to do before you roll your damage. And if that in itself functions, no, that won't affect whether it functions or not. So 2 things are going to occur. 1, you're going to add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. Okay, fine. So you're doing extra damage. And they're going to have to make a strength saving throw. Okay, so let's deal with the Disarming Strike effect first. So once again, I'm just going to right-click there on the header to Combat Superiority, not on the header to the category. And this, just for a point of clarification, doesn't create a new category. It creates a new item within a category. So I'm going to add an effect. And oops, I keep forgetting you can't edit there. So this is going to be Disarming Strike. Or Disarming Attack, rather. We're going to do some damage. Oops, DMG, and it's a 1d8 roll. It's going to be on you. And let's see here. Okay, that's not going to come into play. That's literally just going to stay with round, and I keep going by it. On your next action. That probably sounds about right. When you hit a creature, you can expend 1 superiority die and attempt to disarm the target, forcing it to drop blah blah blah. You can add superiority die to the attack's damage roll. And the target must make a strength saving throw. Alright. So let's heal the Arakokra, and I'm trying to correct my pronunciation of that particular creature because I've never been able to spell it, or pronounce it rather. Next time I'm simply going to choose a creature I can pronounce, like a goblin or something. So, as you can see, I've just temporarily healed that. Alright, so I'm going to set Bing Bing Battlemaster up as the next attacker. I'm going to... I don't want to do that. I'm going to untarget the champion, and target Dererokura. Wow, that's going to be a tongue twister. And I'm going to see if I hit. That is a hit, thankfully. Alright, so before I actually apply the attack, I'm going to click this effect. And you'll see here that it is now applied the effect to myself, or in this case to the Battlemaster. Now I am going to actually do my damage roll. It did not roll the damage automatically. All right, so that means that is not correct. So let's try on next roll. See if that'll work. Okay, so let's just make another attack. And before we actually do any additional damage, I will heal them. All right, so that time that's a miss. And I could potentially just roll the damage, but I like actually making sure that when I hit something or do damage to something, it's with a legitimate hit. All right. And again, that did not roll the additional damage roll. Ah, that is because I didn't fix up the effect. All right. So let's do a temporary heal. This should just piggyback off that attack. I'm going to apply the effect to myself again. And now I'm going to do the damage roll. Interesting. Why is that not triggering? On next roll. That has to be a target. It's applying it to yourself. So, let's see. So if I drag and drop that to there, now I do the damage. Once again, healing the creature. Interesting. It is not triggering the effect on next roll. It works for the champion. Why does it not work for you? It's either self or target. It is on round. There's no duration to it, so there's like not 10 rounds or anything like that. It's an immediate capability. Disarming attack. I know why. All right. This is why clarity is key. That, I believe, should be a semicolon. All right. Let's see if that will trigger the effect. And now let's set this to self. And let's set that back to on next action. So I'm going to clear this. I've got the attack done. I now apply the effect to myself. And then I do the damage roll. No. Okay. What about if I switch that back to next roll? So let's delete that, apply the effect to myself, and then roll the damage roll. Again, it is still not triggering. DMG is the correct keyword I'm looking for here. That is the correct. So just so that you know, the first part is the description. The next part is the condition. And then this would be the modifier. I do not believe that there has to be. Nope, there can be a space. Interesting. So what if I set that to a target? Remove that. DMG. So let's just make sure that everything has stuck. I'm going to drop the effect on me. And then I'm going to do damage. Okay, that is going to be a problem. It is 0 rounds. It is running on the next roll. is not a semicolon. It is, in fact, a colon there. I got them backwards. That's what it is. So if you take a comparison at Commander Strike here, you'll see that this here is a semicolon, and this here is, this here is a colon. So this should now work. If I put that to self, on next action. I'm thinking it can be either or, so we'll test both. But let's right now just start with on next action. So let's remove that. Apply the effect. The Aorca is dying. So let me go ahead and heal that. Should be back up, yep. And I'm going to give this a stupidly ridiculous amount of hit points just for the sake of brevity here. So I don't have to keep healing it. Alright, the attack has been done. Oops. I'm going to apply the effect, and now I'm going to do my damage roll. There we go. And you'll see that it has gone away. So it does work on next action. Let's see what happens if you prematurely apply the effect. So I haven't yet done my attack. If I go ahead and do my attack roll, okay, good. So that is still a hit. Excellent. Okay, so it is working the way that we expected. Awesome. All right. Helps when you actually get it correct. And I'm intentionally leaving the troubleshooting in there just so that you can show how tricky things can be and what to actually look for. So what I did wrong was I put a colon here between the keyword attack and damage. So, sorry, this is the description of the keyword. So the keyword here would be damage. So that was the difference. Now I'm just on a curiosity kick here. If I apply on next roll, does that do that for... Okay, it does not do it for the attack roll, but it still works as intended. So yes, it can be either on next roll or on next action. It doesn't have to be set up, excuse me there. It doesn't have to be set up specifically for that. So it can be on next action or on next roll. Either one will apply. All right. Now, is there a reason it was chosen as action? All right. So let's deal with the saving throw. So that is the disarming effect. And you'll see here that it's going to sort those out that way. Let's add I believe that is a cast that we want to do, and we want to set it up for a saving throw. So it is not an attack. It is, in fact, a save. And it should be a strength check. It could be a group DC. Probably should stick. And there is no damage and there is no attack anywhere. So now what we can do is, I still have the Arokora, whatever. You know what? Screw it. I'm changing it for a goblin so I don't have to worry about pronouncing that anymore. Something that's easy. Goblin. Let's do a goblin boss, make it interesting. And I will give him a ridiculously stupid amount of hit points again. There we go. Oops, gotta make him visible. Ding. Alright, so as a Battlemaster, I am now there. Let's say I have attacked and hit, but just to be sure. That'd be a 7. It keeps looking like a 1. There we go. That should be a hit. Okay, so now I can apply the effect. I do my damage with the longsword. Next, I do the saving throw. And the goblin saved, which means that you don't apply the next effect. And you'll see that it is following afterwards. And there's no way that we can put a description here to indicate that it is in fact related to the disarming effect. So it's very important the order that you put these things into. That's probably why Rob Toohey broke them out into individualized combat superiority maneuvers, if you will, individual features. Now, the next bit is optional, I would say. Really, essentially, the DM is going to have to make the decision that the item has been dropped based on the roll of the saving throw. However, having an effect to indicate that could be useful and a reminder point. So this part is going to be entirely optional, and you should probably talk to your DM about it. But what you can now do is add a new effect. Okay, edit that effect. And this will be Disarming Strike. Once again with a semicolon at the end. But as part of the description, like there's no effect to state that you dropped a weapon. So all you're really doing is applying a description to this particular effect. Okay. And let's just go with disarmed. So I'm going to put a disarmed or item dropped or whatever. Because chances are you're going to choose. I suppose item dropped could be applicable, but I'm going to go with disarmed because it applies to this disarming attack for now. This lasts for 1 round because chances are the creature's going to bend over and pick it up on the next round. And now what you can do is apply that particular effect to the target that you have, and they now have an effect in place. And after the next round, so if I advance combat to the next round, we'll see that there's a good chance that they've gone through and picked up their weapon and the item goes away. So these 3 effects are essentially, this one here, and this one here, are essentially related to Disarming Strike. And the latter being completely informational only. It doesn't actually state what you drop. But what you can do before you actually apply this particular effect is you can simply edit it and add the item here that they dropped or that you stated that they were going to drop. That way it's clear to you as the player and to the DM what item it was that you chose for them to drop. Now you're going to have to state that before you actually execute the Disarming Strike, and once again you're going to have to also expend a Superiority die to do that. So I am going to clear that item. Oops. That would be the whole item. So let me fix that and I'll be right back. All right, so I have fixed that, and I've left this one here intentionally just to show you what it is that we have to do. What you do is you right click on that and then you remove action, not item. So these are items for the combat superiority, and all the other things are items. This is an action that I want to remove from there. So now I literally just have the Commander Strike effect and the Disarming attack effect that I have here. So I apologize for that. That was an unintentional oops on my part. The next maneuver that we're going to look at is Distracting Strike. When you hit a creature with the weapon attack, you can expend 1 superiority die to distract the creature, giving your allies an opening. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. The next attack roll against the target by an attacker other than you has advantage if the attack is made before the start of your next turn. Now there's a bit of a kind of a pain point here because you might not be able to set it up for the start of your next turn, and that's going to be kind of the trick there. So once again, we still have an effect that's going to be thrown on you for adding the superiority die damage to your attack damage roll if you have actually hit a creature. So we're already familiar with that. So let's have a look at adding that. And theoretically, we could potentially genericize one of these because they're very similar. Sorry, this one here is very similar to what you're about to do, but it is probably nice to indicate to the DM that you're making use of that particular maneuver, and it will show up in the actual chat box here. So once again, I'm going to add an effect. This one is going to be, let's see, Distracting Strike. And semicolon, DMG, colon, 1d8. And it is on the next roll. Yeah, that makes sense. And on yourself, because this is going to affect you. Okay, so that is that ability. And just to confirm that it is working, I will apply the effect. And I don't know why it... Oop, can I actually... Nope. Can I move that down? I don't know why it went up there. Anyway. Combat actions. Alright. So. Oh, that didn't work. Distracting Strike. That's on self, not on the target. So why did that apply that there? Ah, because Distracting Strike is up here. There we go. Okay. So if I roll damage, I'll use this one just so... Okay, apparently we're gonna... Yeah, okay, good. So that's working. Now for the next half. The next attack roll against the target by an attacker other than you has advantage if the attack is made before the start of your next turn. So, let's see. This is going to be... I don't know why it's going down there now. Anyway, semicolon. And the keyword that we want here is grant advantage attack. And you can find that on the effects page, which I will link here. And I'm not sure if the semicolon is needed there. Target, and it will be on next action. Okay, so let's apply this to the champion. I'm going to advance combat down. There we go. And I'm going to have the champion. I'm going to have to open up his character again. And have the champion attack with some damage here. No, it's got to be the attack. So that did not roll with advantage. So that is not working. Ah, because I put it on the wrong creature. Duh. Alright, so that goes on to there. Now if I attack, maybe the semicolon is required. Or the colon is required there. Okay. Remove. Drop grant advantage attack on that. Oh. I wonder. I might have used the wrong trigger there. Just one second. Let me load up the effects page here. Just for the sake of putting that there, is that going to be 1 minute, 1 day? Yeah, so round is going to be, it's literally going to be at the end of the round. So it ain't going to last. So if you don't get initiative at the top, when the round finishes, this effect goes away. So that's going to require a little bit of coordination. Now I did use the semicolon there, right? Yep, okay. Grant advantage, attack, targets, self. All right, so let's just make sure it's not. No, okay. So it's not rolling on either of those. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to quickly look up some additional information on the effects page. See if I can figure out what's going on here. All right, so I have figured out what it was that I was doing. Once again, it was a stow derp. I forgot to target the goblin. So if I drag the distracting strike onto the goblin boss, and then I roll, you'll see that it now rolls 2 attacking die. So we are good. Although in this case they missed in both cases because what? Seriously? Oh, I rolled a 1. Good. It wasn't a critical fail. All right. So now the problem is going to be is that let's say, oops, let me bring the turn forward again. Okay, so let's say you don't go first this time around. So let's say you go after the goblin boss. So 13. It's your turn. You go. You apply the effect. And then you pass the token. Okay, that might work. He passes the token. He passes. Okay, good. So it is working the way that we need it to. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to move the back up to the top here. All right, so that is the distracting strike. Now I'm going to try to set this up so that it pops up down here. So I'm going to, oops, right, I don't need that. I just need to remove that action. Add an action, an effect, and why is it going up there? That's DMG V8. No round, it's on self, and it's on next roll. So if I close that, it stays there. I wish you could organize stuff like this, because I don't know why this went down here and that stayed there. Maybe it's because of the, no, if I recall, it automatically did that on its own. All right, so that's going to be a bit of a possible pain point that a player's going to have to be aware that they're going to have to make sure that they do both sides. Okay, that's disarming strike. Distracting. Oh, it's organizing it up here. Okay, I suppose that's not too bad then. Although I don't know why it's putting it after the C here. So shouldn't that be first? Sorry, shouldn't that one be first? All right, and that is distracting strike for now. So this next skill, maneuver, is evasive footwork. The issue with this is that you're going to be rolling a superiority die and then adding that particular die to your overall AC. And you're going to be doing that until you stop moving. I would say that as long as you stay moving, that should always be there. But all right, let's see what we can do. Add an effect. So let me guess, it popped up down here. Okay. Okay, so this one's going to be evasive footwork. Footwork. I'm going to be doing an AC. I want to see if that will modify for that. And I'm going to say 1 round. But technically you could theoretically maneuver. But I would say that would be to your next bonus action. When you move. Okay, so when you move. Right. Okay, so during your movement is not even around. Okay, so let's just empty that out. All right, let's see what we get when we add that. And did that do anything here? No, I don't believe it did. Okay, so apparently the AC does not trigger a die roll, which sucks. So what that implies is that you're going to need to roll the 1d8 manually. So in this case, I would be adding 8 to the AC. And you're literally, each time you make use of this, you're going to need to, I think it is that. All right, so right now we have an AC of 16. If I apply that to myself, I still have an AC of 16. It did not. Okay. I have a funny feeling that you have to do the math on your own. So 16 plus 8 is 24. So now if I apply that, it should take the higher number. No, it still does not do that. All right, did I screw up on... No, I don't think I did. Okay. All right, I'm going to fiddle around with this one, and then I will come back. Okay, so it is in fact working. So what you'll have to do is manually add the value that you're going to be using. So a good indication of that would be to use use like a keyword edit. And what it does is when you add the 1d8 value, so once again, I seem to have rolled an 8. So let's say if I throw an 8 there, I'm going to remove this effect. I'm going to add the effect to myself. Now, as you can see, I've moved the combat activity down to the Goblin boss. Now, when I make the attack roll, in this case, it's a critical hit, but on top of that, you'll see on this particular screen that there's a defense effect of +8 being added to the overall defense. So this is a hit, even though it is a critical. So it literally is a hit in this particular case. And if I do it again, okay, that's a total of 21. This 19. Can I please roll something small? Once again, another 20. See what I mean by rolling critical hits at will? Oh my. Something small. Something small. Okay, that was a 10. So that was a miss. And that was a miss. So you can see that a lot of these are misses, even though he rolled really well. So they rolled a 23, they rolled a 24 on the critical hit, 17, 21, 14, and 10. They're all misses because of the defense effect. Now, if that goes away, the defense, or the attack, comes into play. And the defense effect is now no longer there. So it was working as intended. All right. So that is Evasive Footwork. That is going to require you, the player, to manually remove the effect whenever it is applied to you. But as a precaution, I would recommend throwing 1 round on here to guarantee that it's gone before you do your next move. Now, however, if you do a dash and a move in one, and then you do a dash and a move in another, the effect would not necessarily go away. So I could foresee that as being useful to not have that there. So yeah, I would leave that empty. But you as the player will have to remember to remove the effect before or when you stop moving. I wish there was a if moving check, but there really isn't a way to test that. Okay, so that is evasive footwork. This next one is feinting attack. And with this, you can expend one superiority die and use a bonus action on your turn to feint, choosing one creature within 5 feet of you as your target. You have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature. If that attack hits, add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. The advantage is lost if not used on the turn you gain it. Okay, so now turn there. Does that mean 1 minute? Okay, we'll have to think on that one. All right, so let's add another effect. And let's see here. We want feinting attack. I don't know why it always opens there, but anyway. Feinting. I have no idea why that one has a period on the end and none of the others do. Okay. This is going to be damage 1d8. It's going to be on yourself. I would say on next roll. And where does the if that attack hits, you add this period die. Okay, so this effect you add if you've actually hit. Whereas this one, the advantage is going to be expended on your next round. So this won't expire in the sense that you shouldn't actually add it to your character until you actually have connected. All right, so we have the feinting attack damage roll. So let's add the other effect. All right, so with this, FIE. You're going to be giving yourself advantage to attack. And I'm not sure why, but they do require the... actually, I'm going to test that. I don't think the colon is required there. On next action and on self. So, all right, so this is the advantage effect. Okay, I do have it targeted. Now if I add the colon, remove the effect. Oh, works better if I use the right character. So let's remove that. Let's close the champion again. All right. Okay. It does not require the colon. All right, so the example I was using or basing this off of had the colon on it for some reason, so I'm going to modify this guy to get rid of that colon because it's not required. Okay, so I now have advantage. I have hit, which means I can now apply this and roll the damage, and that should add. Excellent. Okay, so that is now working. That was one of our easier ones. There's actually one small correction I need to make before we're done with this, and that is on this, I need to make sure that it expires before the next round. And that way, as long as combat progresses, if you don't get to attack the target, for some reason it gets out of your reach or whatever, then you will lose the benefit of the effect. So that is one thing that I forgot to mention in that. Our next maneuver is Goading attack, and with this one, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend one superiority die to attempt to goad the target into attacking you. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and the target must make a wisdom saving throw. Okay. On a failed save, the target has disadvantage on all attack rolls against targets other than you until the end of your next turn. All right. So this is going to be a bit more complicated than some of the ones that we have seen so far. And that is what, let's see, thinking. Okay, so we can take care of the effect if you actually connect. So let's get that one out of the way. That one's fairly easy to deal with. We've already done it multiple times. Okay, so goading attack, semicolon, DMG, 1d8. Okay. This is not going to expire because you need to do that. It's on yourself, and I would say it's on your next roll, so it would be your damage roll. Okay. So I'm trying to keep that consistent because it's similar to all the others. As I said, we could potentially make this generic because it does apply to more than one, but the reason I'm doing this is to show you what your combat superiority item here will actually look like if you go through and add all of the individual effects. So it'll be up to you. And as I said, you could make this a bit more generic because it is multiple maneuvers make use of the same concept in the roll. And that's probably why they had it fairly simple. All right, so the effect on the creature is going to be fairly easy to do. All right, new effect. So with this, oops, I keep clicking there. Goading attack, goaded. Oops, goaded. And that is going to give that creature disadvantage to attack. And we don't need that. And it's going to last for 1 round. Target and okay. It's going to expire on its own. So it will remain in place and does not actually expire. Okay, so if that creature attacks multiple targets, they will, and it isn't you, they will suffer disadvantage on that attack. So that is correct. Now the saving throw is a wisdom saving throw. So this is going to be a cast, and it will be a saving throw. So wisdom, group DC. Okay. And that will apply the effect as long as they have failed. Now, if once again there isn't any way to actually go through and apply a name to this, so you're going to have to just keep your eyes open for the save. So if you look here, it'll tell you that this is a wisdom one, whereas this one is a strength DC check. All right, so let's say you've connected. Let's roll that goblin's save. They succeeded, so they don't get the disadvantage. Still a success. Still a success. Really? Am I going to roll high die all day? Well, it's a very low DC check. Okay, there we go. We finally got a failure. All right, so now we apply the effect to the target. And as long as that goblin boss... Okay, who are you attacking? The Battlemaster. So that would be incorrect. There might be a different way to do this. Because theoretically, as long as the creature doesn't attack you, they get disadvantage. If they attack you, they don't suffer disadvantage. Target has disadvantage on all attack rolls against targets other than you until the end of your next turn. Okay, so let's see if I can make this a little bit friendlier. Okay, I gotta look something up just to remind myself how to do it, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I think there is a way that we could actually go through and modify this a little bit. So right now, if we were to keep this as it is, then the effect or the disadvantage would apply to anybody, including you. We don't want that. What we actually want is to create a custom tag of some sort that can be applied to trigger this particular effect. Okay, so to do this, what we want to do is this, and I believe this will work. If target custom let's see, Goading attack PC marker. See if it'll take that. Disadvantage. And let's see if that will actually work. Now, what that does mean is that we will need to make another action, another effect here. And this will have to be called Goading attack PC marker. Okay, so Goading attack PC marker. All right, so let's see if this is actually going to work. Oops, and put that there. I'm pretty certain you need the semicolon regardless. Now, this is going to be for 1 round, and that is going to be for 1 round, and it doesn't expire in both cases until the end of the round. So, if I take this and I apply it to the champion, and the goblin boss attempts to attack that after I apply the new. Let's see what happens. So right now, if I attack, I can't seem to open up my other window. All right, so the goblin boss is currently set up to attack the Battlemaster. Okay, good. I am rolling with 1 die. Now, if I decide to change from the Battlemaster to the champion, and I attack, excellent. All right, excellent. So, and the marker has not gone. Good. That is still there, and PC marker is there. Okay, so if I go to excellent, everything clears away. That is okay, that is working as intended. So, to give you an idea as to what these do, this particular effect here, the Goading attack PC marker, that will have to be applied to all of the remaining party members except yourself by you. So you will have to drag this effect on all of the party members other than yourself. And what that will allow that to happen is when the goblin boss, as long as they have this marker tagged to them, it will always roll with disadvantage whenever it attacks every other party member except your own character. And that's exactly what we want. So that is Goading Attack. That was actually not as bad, and I think I've improved upon the example that I was making use of a little bit. The effects page didn't really have this kind of thing, but it was very similar to what I was using, so I was able to modify that and go from there. Okay, so that is Goading Attack done, and you will have to create three effects and one Wisdom saving throw roll. The next one we need to look at is Lunging Attack, and this one requires a bit of work, I do believe. When you make a melee weapon attack on your turn, you can expend one superiority die to increase your reach for that attack by 5 feet. If you hit, you add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. I don't know if we can modify the reach within a particular attack as an effect. I don't know if that's going to be doable. Give me 1 minute here and I will do a little bit of research, see if that's going to work. Okay, so far the research that I have found is showing that I cannot modify the reach of a given weapon. I've done some playing around here, and all you really get is an indication that there's a plus 5 foot reach here. So technically, you could just simplify things by doing an effect here that simply says this. Plus 5 foot. And leave it at that, simply because you're essentially telling the dungeon master that you're adding an additional 5 foot of reach to your actual attack. So I don't think that'll be required, but it may be something that you want to do. So essentially, what this gives you is the ability to apply the effect to yourself, and it should expire on the next action in theory. So when you make the attack, technically that should have gone away. I'm not sure why it's not expiring. I wonder if you have to have an actual effect here. So if I do a valid effect at that, it should have expended, but there's no condition for it to expend on. Is kind of the point here. So you'll essentially want to tag that as the skill that you're going to use, or the maneuver rather that you're going to use. And then once you've actually gone through and done that, interesting. Okay, I don't know why it had the second semicolon in there. And then once you have done that, go through and add the usual effect that we've been creating so far. So add action, effect, lunging attack. Actually, you know what? You can do this all in one. So we don't need this. So clear that action. Semicolon. I want damage. 1d. Oops. 1d8. Okay, so you've told the DM that you're going to use it. You hit. You apply this, and then you roll your damage. And then it goes away. That is how you could potentially reflect that. And then obviously you would use a superiority die. So that should be 4 and rest. So technically you would go, oop, I've now used it. And that way it's an indication of how you've done that. So I've added the additional reach, if you will, in reference to that, just to make it clear as to what's actually happening. So you can get away with just one effect in this particular case. So this next one, maneuvering attack, is kind of fairly similar to, I would say, the commander's strike option. Because what you're doing is when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend one superiority die to maneuver one of your comrades into a more advantageous position. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and you choose a friendly creature who can see or hear you. That creature can use its reaction to move up to half its speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. Yeah, I read that backwards, but anyway, from the target of your attack. So, essentially, you are going to once again gain an additional die on 1d8 of damage on your attack roll, or your damage roll, rather. But you can choose one of your party members who can actually go through and move around the map without taking an attack of opportunity by the target you have hit. Okay, so you've essentially burned that target's reaction, if you will, to that particular creature, or to that particular player. Oops, that's a semicolon, so damage 1d8. Does it expire? Okay, so it's on the next, on your next roll. So it's similar to what we've been doing so far. So again, you have hit a champion. You can move around this particular creature without suffering any attacks of opportunity, and then you roll your damage. And it will roll. As you can see here, I rolled my 1d10 and I rolled my 1d8 for the additional damage, and it came off as part of the effect. So that's working as intended. So there's a little bit of role playing here that will come into play, but you got to keep in mind that the player character that you're giving the reaction to cannot have already burned through their reaction. So you got to be cognizant of that. So if they have already taken an attack of opportunity against someone else, you can't choose them as the player character that will be able to maneuver around this particular creature. If, however, they have set up their ready action, so they've got a reaction queued, I would also argue that that particular player cannot be the target of your maneuvering attack maneuver, because it's not going to apply to their specific trigger unless they specified that as part of that trigger. That would be a point of argue, and I'd like to get some comments on that and different points of view on that as well. So if you have any concerns that you wish to raise on that, please raise them in the comments, and we'll figure something out here. But that would, as a DM, that would be how I would play it. You would have to choose a player who hasn't already used their reaction or has not set up a ready action in order to make use of the maneuvering attack, unless part of their trigger is gaining a benefit from the Battlemaster on a maneuver. Then technically it could theoretically apply. Alright, now we are on to Menacing Attack. And with this particular one, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend one superiority die to attempt to frighten the target. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, so similar to what we've already done, and the target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it is frightened of you until the end of your turn. So this one is going to require a bit of setup. So let's get rid of, or get the damage roll set up right now. That's the easy one. We've done it multiple times now. So Menacing Attack. Oops. Still can't spell. Alright, DMG, 1d8. That's on self. And on next roll. So that takes care of that. Now there's going to be a wisdom save, so you could theoretically take advantage of this wisdom save that we already have. I would argue that you don't need to create a second one, because I believe that was a wisdom save, right? Yeah, wisdom saving throw. So make use of the existing wisdom save, and don't bother creating an additional effect. But similar to what we did with Goading attack, we're going to create a marker. in this particular case. So I'm going to create a new effect and another new effect because we will need two of them. So in the first one, this is going to be on you. So menacing attack. PC marker. And that is only going to be applicable to self. And is there a duration? Yes, 1 round. Okay. All right. So that should take care of that. And what that will do is it will apply a marker on you. Now we want to do the condition. So menacing attack. If T, is there a semicolon there? I can never remember. Yeah, if T colon custom, too many backspaces. And we want this to be menacing attack PC marker. Then frightened. Okay, I think that's how we spell the frightened effect. Just 1 second here. Yes, okay. And I don't think I need to close that off. No. All right. And that will be for 1 round and on the target. Okay, so in theory, if I drag that onto the Goblin Boss, we can see the effect has now been applied. If I go ahead and actually attack with the Goblin, and right now I have the Champion attacked, and we should only see 1 die getting rolled, which we do. If I switch targets, so I untarget you and target you, and I'm doing this on the DM screen, I should suffer disadvantage. So, okay, the condition is not kicking in. Did I get or misspell something on the marker? Menacing attack, PC marker. Did I have to create or put the semicolon there? So goading attack, goaded, goading attack, PC marker. So I did put, or did I not? Just confirming that I have the battle. Yep, I have the Battlemaster selected. Menacing attack. MENACINGATT PC marker. Is frightened all lowercase? EFT custom disadvantage. Okay, let me just confirm that I've got the syntax correct for custom. So where do I put frightened? I think I figured it out. Conditions. So if I make the attack, range opportunity. Oh. Frightened is an effect. It's not an attack. So theoretically, That should have put the disadvantage to attack and disadvantage to checks as part of the token. So it should have rolled with disadvantage. Alright, I'm going to pause the video and do a little bit of playing around. Okay, so couldn't find an easy way to get the frightened tag or effect to work directly from here. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the case or not, but I'm going to make an enhancement request to see if that's something that can be done. And if so, maybe this will be updated, but I recommend creating one additional effect for this to be able to simulate it. So what I've done, the formatting for the marker is correct. I have modified the condition that gets applied to the NPC that you, are attacking. And what I've done is I've updated the description to include frightened so that everyone knows that he is frightened. And then I have modified it to use the disadvantaged attack because the frightened effect gives you disadvantage to attack and disadvantage to checks when it's in relation to you. So that would be the second thing that I would recommend doing, is create a new effect and modify it so that it's fairly similar to this. Frightened if custom menacing attack PC marker dis CHK. I don't think the CHK will come into play unless you as a Battlemaster happen to take advantage of a bonus action that triggers a check for that particular NPC. But it would be useful to most likely apply both effects. That way, everything is there. And just for the sake of, oops, I gotta drop it onto the NPC. So both effects are now in place. So we have the check and the disadvantage. Ooh, and this should be one round. So let's get rid of that. Now I've been dragging these over, but I don't actually have to do that. So this should be, yeah, one round. So at the expenditure of the round, when the Battlemaster's turn comes back up, this will drop out, and this marker should also drop off, because I have also set that up to be one round. Okay, so just to confirm that everything is working, if I do an attack against the Battlemaster, I roll with disadvantage. If I do an attack against the champion, confirming that it's, yep, okay, I do not roll with disadvantage. Now, if the Battlemaster triggers a check of some kind, and I don't know, no, he doesn't have anything right now that would trigger the check. So that second effect might actually be pretty useless. But this guarantees that you get the same effects of being frightened specific to you. So it abides by the rules of the description that was put in place for menacing attack. So that would be my recommended way to configure that. Now there is a bit of a problem. You can see here how many effects we have going through and building up here. We're literally just past the halfway point. So we are going to have a ton of other effects. And this might be why other players or other Fantasy Grounds, Dungeon Masters, and whatnot created a unique feature for each of these. But I'm liking the fact that once you've burned through all of these, the ability to use that goes away. So that is something that myself as a DM would prefer. That way you don't accidentally do something. So just let me execute a quick short rest here to get everything back. Okay, and there is one thing I forgot to do, group. After I reset everything here. Battlemaster. There. That way it gets rid of the powers. powers category there. Okay, so we are now past the halfway point in setting up the effects, so let's continue on. This next one is actually fairly easy, and it is Parry. When another creature damages you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to expend one superiority die to reduce the damage by the number you roll on your superiority die plus your dexterity modifier. So this one actually should be fairly straightforward to be able to go ahead and create in theory. Oops, I keep forgetting I don't need to scroll up. So if I add a new, it won't be an effect this time, it will be a heal. And what I want is a 1 die 8. So if we just drag the d8 up to there, plus times stat. So if we do 1 times multiple of level or ability plus times stat. So let's see what that actually does. That's an 8, which means I get a 9. And dexterity is a +1. So if I temporarily increase this to a 17 to get a 3, and I execute a heal, does it multiply it? No, it's doing it the way that we need it to. Okay, good. So this here is implied, an implied 1 apparently when it's empty. I actually don't know how to get a value in there. I've tried typing it in. Oh wait, okay, so yeah, you can add it. So if you want a 1, oops, come on. Okay, so apparently it has to be a 2 or larger. So 1 is the default value there, plus your dexterity modifier. And I believe that's what it says here. Plus your dexterity modifier. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to revert this back to the 13 to get the +1. So yeah, that's actually fairly straightforward. So in this case, when you receive an incoming attack, the DM is going to apply the damage to you. Once that's done, oops, and that should be to self, not to target. Oops. What should happen is you as the player, so let's say I'm going to modify this, I have to modify this on the DM side. If I have, say, let's say I took 6 points of damage. And then I can immediately, and I still have my reaction, I can expend that reaction, use a superiority die, and execute a heal, and it should heal the wounds. As we can see here, it has done so by 3. And if you can only do that once, well, you can do it again if you get another reaction. So let's say that happens, 9, now my wounds are gone. So that is definitely a nice convenient ability to have. I don't know if the ability to do this was in the classic edition or not. I honestly don't know. But anyway, that is Parry. Okay, so this one is the precision attack maneuver. When you make a weapon attack roll against a creature, you can expend 1 superiority die and add it to the roll. This means that you're adding it to your attack roll. You can use this maneuver before or after making the attack roll, but before any effects of the attack are applied. My recommendation is that you always ensure this effect is in place if you intend to use it before you actually attack. It's just going to simplify things for you and for the DM later. So let's go ahead and make this. So this is going to be an effect. We're going to call it precision attack. Precision attack. It's going to be with attack 1d8. It's 1d8. And it is going to be on self. And I would say it's going to expire on the next roll. All right. So if I apply, let's get rid of that. If I apply this to myself just prior to my attack, and then I go ahead and roll an attack roll, you'll see that it will roll the 1d8. it just pretty much guarantees that you're going to hit. So in this case, I would have rolled a 9 plus my plus 6. That would have been 15. That still could have been a miss if it was a very high level creature that you're going up against. Not so much in the case of a goblin boss. But setting that up to just automatically roll is going to make things a lot easier for you. I suppose theoretically you could set it up to do it after the fact, but then you're just going to be manually rolling a 1d8 in chat so that the DM has to add that to the total attack that you already did. This just simplifies things for you, in my opinion. That's it. That's a precision attack. All right, now we are on to pushing attack. With a pushing attack, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend 1 superiority die to attempt to drive the target back. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, so something we've already done. And if the target is large or smaller, it must make a strength saving throw. Okay, that one's going to be a bit trickier. On a failed save, you push the target up to 15 feet away from you. Now, is there a roll that occurs to determine whether it's 15 feet, or do you get to choose that? It's not overly clear with that particular description. So let's deal with the simple side of it. Add action effect. This is going to be pushing attack, rather. Damage 1d8. That is going to be to self. And on next roll. So that takes care of that. So after a bit of research, I found that there really isn't an easy way to trigger that. So that's going to have to be metagamed out in that respect. Now, we've already created a strength saving throw earlier, so we don't have to go ahead and do that. So you're going to have to know in advance whether a creature is large or smaller. So it could be a tiny, small, medium, or large. Those would be the type of creatures that you could actually execute that saving throw on. I'm going to continue to do additional research, and I may modify this video after the fact if I do find a way to do this. But for now, it's looking like you literally won't be able to add that particular effect as an if target condition or anything along those lines. It doesn't appear like you can trigger an actual effect like that. It's probably going to be an extension that has to be added in order to do that. Maybe even a description of a spell, for example. But in this case, there's not much more that we can do for a pushing attack. Okay, so with that in mind, we are now on to Rally. This one's kind of works similar to the parry that we did, but slightly differently. On your turn, you can use a bonus action to expend 1 superiority die to bolster the resolve of one of your companions. When you do so, choose a friendly creature who can see and hear you. That creature gains temporary hit points equal to the superiority die roll plus your charisma modifier. So we are going to want to create a heal effect for this. And in so doing, we need to ensure that it's 1 hit die, and we want to take the temp typed and change that to temp. Sorry, it won't be self, so this will be a target that you are choosing, and it's going to be based on your charisma modifier according to the skill. So theoretically, 1 die 8 should be rolled. And applied to that particular thing. So if I take the champion, that's a 3, and apparently the Battlemaster has a pretty poor bonus. So if I take this and make that an 18, for example, and I redo that on the champion, there should be the bonus added to it. So that is good. That is working as intended. All right, that was a 10 if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so that is Rally. Okay, so next we're on to Riposte, and believe it or not, we only have 3 left total, and this one's actually fairly straightforward. When a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction, if you haven't already done so, and expend 1 superiority die to make a melee weapon attack against the creature. Excuse me. If you hit, you add the superiority die to the attack damages roll. So we've already done that. That's the same effect that we have been repeating, except for the actual name of the skill. So this is riposte, damage, 1d8. That's to self, and there's no round, and it expends on your next roll. So that's probably one of our easier ones. Okay, so sweeping attack. I wonder if someone's going to count how many okays I actually say in a video. I might start trimming them out. Sweeping attack. When you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you expend one superiority die to attempt to damage another creature with the same attack. Choose another creature within 5 feet of the original target and within your reach. If the original attack roll would hit the second creature, so you don't re-roll your attack roll, it takes damage equal to the number you roll on your superiority die. The damage is of the same type dealt by the original attack. So in the case of a sword, in a lot of cases, that's going to be slashing, with the exception of a short sword. That will be piercing. And it doesn't seem to dictate whether you have to be using a two-handed or one-handed weapon with this, or whether it's even a ranged attack. So that is going to give us 3 potential damage types that we can actually do. And that means that we need to create 3 damage modifiers. All right, so we want 1d8. And there is no bonus, I don't believe. Okay, that is correct. So it is literally just 1d8 in the type. It's best to create the different categories of damage now, so that if you change weapons later, you've already got things made and you don't need to worry about changing it out. Oops, this is actually lowercase, so I need to fix my previous one. Although I don't think it actually matters. It just seems to be the standard to use lowercase lettering, so let's stick with the standard. And the last type would be bludgeoning. I suppose technically you could do magical, but I'm not entirely certain whether that would actually work. B-L-U-D-G-E-O-N-I-N-G. Bludgeoning. Okay. So that is sweeping attack. So you will do normal damage to the creature you primarily attacked, and then you can do 1d8 additional damage of the same type to a creature immediately next to it. That's how sweeping attack works. Finally, with the last one, we are looking at the trip attack. So, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend one superiority die to attempt to knock the creature down, or target down. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, okay, so something we've already done. And if the target is large or smaller, this sounds like a metagaming thing that you'll have to deal with, it must make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, you knock the target prone. All right. Okay, so we need a prone effect and the original effect. So we need 2 effects, and we've already got the strength saving throw. So this is a trip attack. This is going to be damage, 1d8, self, on next roll. That part is done. And this one is going to be trip attack prone, and you're literally just going to be adding the prone effect. Is there a round? Does not appear to be. All right, so let's say that I already executed the attack, and this goblin boss failed his strength check. In theory, that should mean that that particular creature is prone. So if I attack with the Battlemaster, just move combat up here. If I attack with the Battlemaster, yeah, it automatically rolls the advantage roll. Excellent. So that's working. That is actually fairly straightforward. So the saving throw and the effect would only apply if the target is large, medium, tiny, or small. Yeah, small or tiny, depending on the reverse order there. And that finishes off all of the attacks here, or the maneuvers rather. But we're not quite done. We got one more thing that we have to do. Now, the one thing we haven't yet done is gone through the explanation of the saving throw here. So there are several saving throws that come into play, and they are triggered off of, for the most part, a wisdom and a strength saving throw in this case. And it states here, some of your maneuvers require a target to make a saving throw to resist the maneuver's effect. The saving throw DC is calculated as follows. Base of 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength or dexterity modifier, your choice. Interesting. So we need to adjust these because group DC plus isn't going to be the applicable type. What it is 8 plus ability. It'll be a strength check for this particular character because he has a higher strength, so probably going to make use of that skill. And what you'll now see is that the DC rating that a creature is going to have to succeed against is now a 14. The same thing will happen with Wisdom. So with the Wisdom skill saving throw, it's still going to be a strength. There's quite a few things here, so bear with me a moment. All right, so strength and proficiency bonus. Okay, now I'm not sure what the ability is going to throw in here, but as you can see here, we also have a wisdom check 14. So if I roll on that particular Battlemaster, it's going to be rolling a strength check. And does it give me any more? So that one was a wisdom save. Good, it triggered a wisdom save. And it compared it against the DC 14, which in this case he rolled a 9, so it failed. In the case of the strength check, once again it is a failure. They rolled a 4, and on the DM screen I can confirm that it did in fact compare that against the Goblin's strength. So that is now set up, and believe it or not, we have now practically finished setting up. I keep forgetting. I had to, when I was doing the research for, which one was it here? Pushing attack. I unintentionally deleted things again. And you know how much of a pain in the butt that is. Because I went through and I had to go through and recreate everything. And luckily enough, it went through and organized everything the way I expected it to originally organize stuff. All right, so now we're in an action state. So you can minimize this. And all you now have to do is go through and find the particular maneuver that you're looking for. And you don't need to worry about it. It's there. And then the couple that are metadata, like for example the pushing attack and the sweeping attack for their saving throw on their size, in both those cases, literally you'll just go through and talk to the DM. Hey, what's the size of this particular creature? He or she will tell you. And then that should simplify whether you execute the saving throw against them or not. So your 2 saving throws are here. I suppose I could have put them both in the same location, but everything is split up based on the location of where it's brought up in this list here. So if you keep this sheet open, you should be able to very quickly identify, okay, yep, menacing attack's there, and menacing attack has a couple of things that you have to deal with. Okay, and hopefully how I've shown you to use them here will make things a little bit easier for you as a player to be able to utilize the combat superiority skill. And that finishes the combat superiority. Believe it or not, this character is still only at level 3. All of that setup was strictly for this one combat superiority skill. And we still have a few more to go through. Okay, So as promised, I am going to move on to the Student of War, and we can just close anything here that is specific to our previous testing. So Student of War allows you at 3rd level to gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tool of your choice. Now what you're going to want to do is go to your class character sheet, your class sheet for your character, and find the link for tools. The artisan tools are in this category. So you've literally got all of these items here that you can choose from, down to woodcarver's tools. And all you do is you go to your abilities tab, modify a new line, or hit enter rather, and I'm going to give this guy carpenter's tools. Now, you get proficiency with one. It doesn't mean you've got them. Some DMs will give you the tools right then and there rather. Other DMs are going to make you buy them. It just means that you are now familiar with being able to utilize those tools. And in the case of carpenter's tools, that's 8 gold pieces. Jeweler's tools are slightly more expensive. Glassblower tools are even more expensive. And I believe tinker tools and alchemist tools, or supplies rather, are the most expensive that you can buy. So these are all the tools that you can actually make use of. It doesn't mean you actually get to own one. It just means you can now use one. And that's literally it. That is Student of War. Okay, as promised, it is now time to go through the rest of the leveling. So if we look on our fighter character sheet, we are going to gain our next ability improvement. And I'm going to just simply drag the fighter category over top, or class over top of that. I'm going to add 2 strength points to there, just to simplify things. With the Battlemaster, because we're already closing in on 2 hours of recording video. I've been actively recording this now for a grand total of 5 hours. I want to go through and try to finish the Battlemaster off today so that I can start focusing on the next archetype, which is the Eldritch Knight. So I'm going to burn through the rest of these pretty quickly. Alright, level 5, we're going to gain our extra attack ability. And that shows up under here. And literally all it means is that during your attack action phase, you can make a second attack. So in the case of the Battlemaster, who is currently wielding two longswords, one longsword and a short sword. I keep forgetting I set that up as a two-handed weapon. I can now potentially attack a total of 3 times. And what I mean by that is my action phase will allow me to attack once and twice with the longsword. If either of those hits, I can attack with the short sword as a bonus action. However, I also have Action Surge, which gives me the ability to use another attack action, or action in general. With Action Surge, I could technically attack 4 times total, so it's 1 additional attack over top on this particular round. And the reason for that is because the attack action is an action, which means that when you use Action Surge, you get an action back. That includes an attack action, which implies that you can make 2 attacks as part of your second set of attacks past your initial set of attacks. That's how I interpret that as a DM. That means at 5th level, you can now attack a total of 4 turns in 1 round if you burn your Action Surge as your bonus ability. However, because you have done that, you would not be able to use your short sword attack. That is just simply not possible. At level 6, we gain another ability improvement here. And there's something that I just kind of skipped, or rather glossed over. Oops, I didn't need to move that. I wanted to move this, or drag that. When I added the +2 to the ability here, when I gained the ability score improvement at level 4, technically there were 3 options I could have made use of. The first was adding +2 to one particular ability. The second option is to take two abilities, such as Dexterity and Constitution, and add 1 point to each of those. And then there is a third option that you will have to talk to your DM about to see if they're going to allow it, and that is taking a feat. Feats are special abilities that require certain conditions. So, for example, an alert doesn't have any additional conditions that are required. However, Elven Accuracy does. It requires you to be either an elf or a half-elf. So if you're a human, dwarven, tabaxi, tiefling, or any other race other than elf or half-elf, you cannot take that feat. The problem is, in some cases, feats can be extremely overpowered. Luck would be an example of that to a certain degree. But I've already covered in detail the alert and the luck ability in the champion class video. If you want to, I would recommend go and take a look at that for the time being. I may decide to do a video that covers all of these feats and how to use them at a later date. But for now, that's where I have the information currently recorded. So in this case, I am literally going to simplify the Battlemaster by adding 1 point to these, and when I get the next ability score improvement at level 8, I will go ahead and add a feat to show you what that will look like. Because to be fair, I've done that in the champion video, so I should probably do that here just so that you as a player understands how to do that without really having to go and watch that. Okay, so the next level, we're going to get our next martial archetype ability or feature, and that's at level 7. So I'm going to drag this into place. And if we go to our abilities tab, we should see know your enemy. Here it is here. Now this feature isn't usable so much, but it is going to require you to spend 1 minute, which means you're spending 10 rounds if you're in combat studying that particular creature. So I, as a DM, will generally recommend that you add know your enemy to the list of your actions and modify it so that it is part of your Battlemaster class. So Battlemaster, and just hit tab to move it over. And what this will allow you to do is during combat, you can indicate to your DM that you're going to make use of this particular skill, and you literally just click here so that there is a chat record stating that you have used it. You don't expend it. It doesn't cost you anything to expend it, but it does take you time to observe that particular creature. I'm not entirely certain whether a DM... creature outside of combat. There you go. So you can't do this as part of combat. And it gives you the ability to rate a given creature based on these particular traits. And a DM is required to respond with equal, superior, or inferior as their responses. So when you say, I want to study that particular goblin boss to learn whether I am superior to him in strength, you will spend 1 minute doing so before combat, or potentially after combat if he didn't get involved, or if the goblin boss didn't get involved, or you yourself didn't get involved, studying that particular creature, and then the DM will tell you whether you are weaker, stronger, or equal to in relation to the attribute that you chose. So that is how Know Your Enemy works. Okay, at level 8, we get ability score improvement number 3. Yes, 1, 2, 3. So this case, I will go ahead and apply a feat. And I'm just going to choose a simple one. It's not really anything complicated. And that is just literally alert. And I want you to pay attention to this initiative here. So feats fall under this category here. They are not a feature. They are a feat. They're special in that respect. And you just drag it and drop it into this particular tab. Now, what'll happen is when you drop that into place, it will go ahead and make initiative adjustments and all that for you. And you can see here that your initiative roll has now been increased. You don't have to do anything as a player. But one thing that should be pointed out about this particular skill, you can, as a player, still be surprised. If you are unconscious, i.e. sleeping, you can be surprised. If you have been knocked out due to sleeping gas or some other form of knockout, you've been incapacitated, things like that, you can still be surprised. If a magical spell has knocked you out and put you to sleep, or a gas cloud has put you to sleep, or anything like that, you as a player can still be surprised. So I have had players push back against that, but that is the definition of the rule, while you are conscious. Okay? In addition to that, other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you. So in other words, during a surprise round, there is no longer an advantage roll against you when they are attacking you. All right, level 9, we are going to get our next fighter feature, and that is Indomitable. And I'm just going to drag the fighter component there, bring up the ability, find Indomitable, and this is an actionable capability here. Okay, so beginning at level 9, you can re-roll a saving throw that you fail. If you do so, you must use the new roll, and you can use this feature again until you finish a long rest. So this, again, falls under Fighter. So it'll slot down in here, and you can only use it a limited number of times. So we're going to set that to Preparation, and you need to do a long rest in order to get this back. So right now you get to use it once daily. Okay? And when you use it, it goes away. And the only time you actually get it back is if you execute a long rest. Okay? And I just executed a long rest on the DM screen. We do get additional uses of it here shortly in the levels coming up. But that is literally how Indomitable works. So at level 10, we are going to gain another martial archetype here. And this is going to trigger a bit of work for you as the player. And the reason I say that is because of the following. I'm going to drop that into place. What we received is improved combat superiority. So if we look here, we should see that as part of our features list. Looking at improved combat superiority, you remember when we went through and set up all of our combat superiority items, we used a 1d8. You're now going to have to modify all of these and change them to a 1d10. The good news is you only have to do this once you receive this or achieve this level, and you don't need to modify your saving throws. It is literally just anything that has the 1d8 reference in it. Oops. All right. That one. Not that one. That's this one. And this is why I'm thinking in some ways it might make sense to genericize the 1d8 roll. So all you'd have to do is set up potentially 2 of these. A lot of these are repeating in the sense that they require the roll to be self, and it's on your next roll for damage. You could make all of the ones that are like that, just make use of that one capability. And I may do that at the end of the video just to show you what it would look like after the fact. And to show you how reduced the number of items are going to be. And it would get rid of the descriptions, but it would save you the requirement to have to go through and modify all of everything that we've gone through and set up. Now, as you can see, it's not taking me overly long. So if you're a player like me, and now this is going to require a bit of a change. When you right-click on this particular thing, I was originally thinking you're going to have to go through and remove this, but you don't have to. When you right-click on this, you'll get this option to clear dice. And all you do is you drag your 1d10 into place. It doesn't change anything else, which is good, because you don't necessarily need to do anything else. So that actually took a little less time for that one than I expected. I'm going to close that. All right. Now, me as a DM, I would actually request that players do set up all of the maneuvers that they are going to make use of specifically in this, so that I know exactly which maneuver they are going to make use of. Because what's going to happen is, as a DM, I am going to take notes as to what maneuvers you as a player have selected. And it's my way of determining that you are sticking to the rules that you yourself as a player put into place. And that you're not trying to take advantage of the complexity of Fantasy Grounds and use a maneuver that you don't yet have. Now, keep it in mind as well, as you level up, you gain additional maneuvers. So in a lot of ways, it's worth the time to go through and set up all of the individual maneuvers that you could potentially use. And then as you level up and hit level 10, just go through and make the adjustments that you need to the ones that you regularly use. You don't have to do them all at once. If you find that you decided to change a maneuver on the next time that you gain one, then you can go ahead and make that adjustment. Now, there is another thing that I didn't do. So at level 7, I believe, yes, level 7 and 10, we should have received additional maneuvers. And at the same time, level 7, we gain one more superiority die. So technically this should be 5. So I'm going to change this to preparation, and I'm going to change that to 5. So that should have occurred at level 7, not at level 10. Correct? Yes, level 10. Now, we'll have to keep that in mind when we hit level 15, because that is the next time that we gain our next superiority die capability here. So as you can see, now we have 5 uses. So once again, if I go through and I burn through all of the superiority die for a particular on a particular encounter, if I haven't taken another rest, I'm not going to get that capability back. But even if I take a short rest, everything comes back. So it's fairly straightforward and relatively simple to adjust once you know how to do it. All right, at level 11, we are going to gain an extra attack for our fighter. So we need to make a quick modification. Actually, no, we don't. Because it's an extra attack, you as the player can now attack in the following combinations. Your first attack action round can complete 3 actual attacks. A fourth attack can be executed if you choose not to use Action Surge and you are dual wielding a weapon. So in the case of the short sword here, that I would be able to use that short sword as a fourth attack as part of a bonus attack round. However, if I decide to use Action Surge, I would forgo the ability to execute the short sword attack. Instead, I would gain 3 additional attacks with the longsword. And what that means is that you can attack as many as 4 or 6 times, depending on the combination of abilities that you choose. All right, at level 12, we are going to gain another ability score improvement, and I'm actually going to push dexterity up by 2 this time. It's going to not adjust my AC, but it is going to improve my overall initiative, which means in theory I should be able to start attacking earlier. As a Battlemaster, that's a good thing because you can now make use of your maneuvers to set up other players to be able to potentially do a little bit more damage or take advantage of a situation. Okay, at level 13, we gain an additional use of Indomitable. So I'm going to drag Fighter over, drop that into place, switch to my Action tab, change this to Preparation again, and increase that to 2, because it is now possible to use this twice. At level 14, we now gain an additional ability score improvement. Again, that means that we can take a stat and add 2 or 3 or 4. Now, there's something that I didn't do when I made the adjustment to my Constitution at level 6. I should have gone through and added 6 hit points. So that should technically be 116. But I'm now going to bump this up twice. I think that might not yet push me up. No, it does. So it does push me up an additional point, which means I'm now level 14, and I can now add 104 or an additional 14 hit points to that. And the reason for that, it's increased your total Constitution bonus by 1 times 14 equals 14 points added to 116 gives me 130 hit points for this character. All right. So at level 15, two things are going to change. So first things first, I'm going to drag the fighter over here. I'm going to modify the number of superiority dice that I now have to 6, and point out an ability that we now have, and it is called Relentless. That is the next Battlemaster specific archetype ability. Starting at level 15, when you roll initiative and have no superiority die remaining, you regain 1 superiority die. So the DM is going to have to do that for you. You don't really have the ability to get at this and make a modification for something that you've expended. So if I burn, oops, I keep forgetting it doesn't tick down. If I burn through this, technically I could switch to standard and then regain. So it is actually something you have the ability to do. Okay. I apologize. I was mistaken there. I totally forgot that that was now a capability. So yes, you could switch to standard, regain 1 of your superiority die roll, and that gives you the ability to use 1 during that existing combat round. So this is useful if you've already burned through all of your superiority die and didn't get a chance to do either short or long rest before you got into an encounter again that required you to do an initiative roll, and that gives you the ability to restore 1 point back. All right, level 16 gives us our next ability score improvement. Now, something that is here is that I could choose any 2 skills again, add them by 1 like I did with the Dexterity and Constitution at level 6. I could take another feat, or I could take one of these skills and add 2 to it. I'm actually going to do the Dexterity to 18, and that pushes my initiative roll up to a 9, plus 9, due to the fact that I have Alert, which adds 5 to that. So level 17 is going to give us 2 ability changes that we have to make, and that's under the Actions page. We're going to gain 1 additional use of Action Surge, and we're going to gain an additional use of Indomitable. So you want to switch this to Preparation, scroll down until you can see this, increase each of those by 1. And then that gives you the ability to make use of that. Now, yeah, you don't gain any additional abilities to use that. At least not that it states anyway. So level 18 for the Battlemaster is a bit trickier. And the reason I say that is because it says here that you're getting a martial archetype feature. Actually, you're not. If you look here, there are no additional features that are listed. Relentless was the last one at level 15. What you are getting is a change to your superiority die. You are now getting the ability to roll d12s as opposed to d10s, which we changed at level 10. So that is the change that has to be made. And once again, you have to go into your combat superiority skill, and I'm going to remove these pips just so that they're available for use, and modify all of these to now use a d12. And once again, it doesn't take overly long, and you really should only have to focus on adjusting the ones that you actually have used or are set up to use. Well, there we go. Okay, 12 here. I have moved my mouse around so much today that I'm literally hitting edges. because it's not in its usual position. Okay, so once again, I'm going to clear the dice and grab the D12 and drop that into place. And you'll notice that the ability here has, or the bonus here has gone up. That's because I added additional points to my dexterity, which increased the bonus. So this adding to your dexterity would also benefit other players as a Battlemaster, because in this case you're going to heal yourself for 1d12 plus 4 hit points, but further on down there is another ability for you to heal others for a few extra hit points, and it does apply there, as well as once we scroll down we should see that here. So here, yeah, the temporary hit points. So it gives you the ability to add additional hit points, although in this case it's charisma, so you can actually just ignore everything that I just said. I keep forgetting that they switch that to charisma. All right, and oops, this will be a die 12. The good news is you're also increasing your overall damage. So even though you're not getting a new martial archetype ability at level 18, you are still getting a significant increase in the amount of damage that you can do overall when you first acquire combat superiority. So I kind of forgot to drag level 18 into place, but I just did that, so that is now done. Level 19, we are going to get our final ability score improvement. And in this case, I'm probably going to, let's drag this into place so I don't forget this time. I'm going to push dexterity up to 20. And again, this is only going to benefit the combat superiority skill. So the bonuses here we get for healing. Where is that there? There it is. Now means that I'm gaining a +5. So you're at a minimum getting 6 hit points back. And finally, level 20, we're going to gain our last extra attack capability. Now what that means is that as a Battlemaster, if you are wielding, oops, I should probably shrink this window again. Dual wielding like this, you can get a total of 5 or 8 attacks. And what I mean by that is, as I've stated in the past, on an attack action, you can attack 4 times now. So you now have your 1 primary attack plus 3 extra attacks. All right. If you are still wielding 2 weapons, if one of these hits, you get to make an attack with your short sword. Your other option is if you want to, and that's as part of your bonus attack or bonus action. If you wish to forgo that, instead use an action surge, you gain the ability to attack 4 additional times, because you're going to be using an attack action, and the definition of extra attack is an attack action gives you a total of 3 additional attacks when you hit level 20. So that means you can attack 8 times in a single round. We have now completed this particular class, and I hope you have found this particular video useful. If you want any additional items added to it, please let me know in the comments. If you feel that I didn't cover a particular area enough, or you have additional questions, don't hesitate to ask there as well. I'll go through and try to respond best I can. If you did like this video, feel free to click that like button, and if you do like what I'm doing and want to see more, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe.